What's going on, guys? Gamers Goon here today with, once again, a college football predictions video. Now, going throughout these weeks of college football, we will be picking the winners and losers from each game of the top 25 teams and who Yahoo Sports thinks is the interesting games of the week. We're not going to be picking no little matchups here and there. Like, for example, St. Francis is playing Akron right now. We're not picking that game. It don't matter. We're here to talk about teams that you'll actually watch. And we're starting it off hot with Michigan State and Western Michigan tomorrow at 4 p.m. my time, which, let me see here. That's 4 p.m. my team, so it's about 7 p.m. somewhere else. But Michigan State, Western Michigan. Who do we think is going to win this game? We're not doing confidence points or anything like that, but it's pretty simple if you ask me. Michigan State's a team that saw a lot of growth last year under their first-year head coach, and Michigan State's looked really good ever since they had a change of coach. They had Kenneth Walker last year. They definitely took steps in the right direction, and they were in contention at one point for the college football playoff spot. Western Michigan, on the other hand, they really haven't been anything too special to mention. Michigan State is entering this game as the 15th team in the country, and I could barely see a scenario in which they don't win. So I'm going to take Michigan State and the Spartans to defeat Western Michigan here in week 1 of college football. Then we get my Fighting Illini. You might be like, you're wearing an Oregon shirt. Yeah. Here, I'll prove it right now. Let's do this. Take a little screenshot here. Boom. That's above my desk right now. Fighting Illini, and I'm also playing Madden, or was playing Madden before filming this video, where I got Miles Bryant. Well, at least I'm trying to re-sign it right now. But we got Illinois versus Indiana. Illinois entering this game 1-0 after their defeat of Wyoming, handling business as they did last week. Big win at home, going up against the Indiana Hoosiers. For the first Big Ten matchup of the season for both teams. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this game's going to be close. I could see it going either way, but ultimately I think Illinois is going to have the upper hand simply because they have a little bit of an advantage having gotten their feet under them in week 0. They're going to have at least a little bit of an advantage. They're going to have seen certain looks that Indiana might not be ready for necessarily. Indiana does have more film, but then again, how much game experience in that moment does attribute to an advantage for the Illini. And to me, I think that is a little bit more of an advantage. I think these teams are fairly evenly matched. Indiana lost a lot of guys last year. They brought Ty Freifogel, lost Peyton Hendershot, Michael Penix Jr. He's now at Washington. A lot of their guys from last year on that offense that kind of made you look at them and say, maybe we can be a little bit afraid of them. They're not there. I'm not really too concerned. I think it's going to be a good matchup tomorrow afternoon. I'm excited for it. I want to see them play again. I'm very fond of my Illini, as you can tell. But there's a lot of guys on that team, on that Illini team, that I think are a little bit underrated. And I think they're not necessarily getting the same respect as they should. I don't think they're great necessarily. I don't think we're going to go out and win 10 games or anything like that. But I do think we're definitely bowl eligible this year. And I think that Indiana is, at least early in the season, after we already have a week down and they don't, I think we win this game. I'm not going to say spreads for any of these games. I'm just going to give you the straightforward answer. I got Illinois beating Indiana tomorrow afternoon. Then we get the TCU Bullfrogs traveling to Boulder, Colorado, and they will be facing the Colorado Buffaloes. Now, both of these teams are teams that I think could potentially have better years than people think. Colorado, you're not going in the year like, oh my goodness, I think Colorado's gonna be a top 25 team. I wouldn't be shocked, man. I don't disrespect this Colorado team. They have a lot of guys that I think could potentially end up putting out a good showing this season. And then the TCU, they're always a team that they're gonna be able to compete. They might not necessarily be great. They might not win games. They might not do any of that, but they're playing a tough brand of football down there. I could see them potentially making it maybe a 1 or 2 week appearance in the top 25 if the cards fall right. This is a game I'm going to be watching tomorrow. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch tomorrow. And I'm going to go with the Colorado Buffaloes to beat TCU on Friday Night Football. Next, we got Boston College going up against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. They are traveling to Boston to face Boston College. Man, I don't know how to say this nicely. I don't really know how to say it nicely at all. I don't believe at all in the Rutgers football team. I don't have a single sense of hope for them this season. I don't think they're going to be good at by any means. Granted, they could go on and win 8 games, and you could be screen recording this and saying, oh my God, this kid doesn't know anything. This kid had no idea that we were as good as we were supposed to be. Guess what? They told DeMar DeRozan he sucked too, and guess what? They got slandered for it too. But I don't think this Rutgers team is going to be amounting to anything. I really don't. Boston College, I think, is slightly better. I'm not saying that they are by far better or anything like that. I think Boston College definitely has an advantage on Rutgers. I think Boston College is a solid team. I don't necessarily think they're a great team, but we'll see this year. I do have them beating the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, though. And then we get a matchup in Iowa going up against South Dakota State. Now, I don't even understand how this was allowed. This should be a one-sided matchup. Iowa going into the season unranked. I think they are a team that's definitely going to compete for a top 25 spot at some point this season. They always have big guys on that offensive line. They always have a defender or two that's pretty damn good. Iowa's a team that I expect to see at least break into that top 25 at some point early on in the season. I don't know if they maintain it, but I think they're going to be pretty solid. And they also do have, I believe, Laporta is still there at tight end. Pretty solid kid for him. So they're gonna have a pretty easy week 1 in my opinion. I think they could beat South Dakota State. I don't think they're going to be much of a issue for them. Next, we get the 8th ranked Michigan Wolverines going up at home against the Colorado State Rams. This game, once again, I just don't see how Michigan loses it. It's going to be pretty brutal. These top 25 teams, a lot of them are playing easier opponents this season, to start the season. It's respectable, I guess. You get a game in under you before you get into more important games, but these games aren't fun to predict. I'm not going to be watching Michigan versus Colorado State, especially with some of the games that they have going on this weekend. I don't think we're going to be watching any Michigan versus Colorado State game. Then we get Texas A&M going up against Sam Houston State. Yet another one of these games that just doesn't really strike me as exciting whatsoever. Texas A&M should and will beat Sam Houston State. I'd be shocked if there was any other result for that. Then we have NC State going up against Eastern Carolina. Now, this is a game that's intriguing to me, man, because you'd think with these two teams, you'd just be thinking, hey, NC State, Eastern Carolina, that could be a pretty decent matchup. But this is actually interesting because this NC State team legitimately this year, I believe, has a shot, an outside shot, the Cincinnati shot of getting to the college football playoffs. If they go undefeated, if NC State were to go undefeated, and one of the Power 5 teams, whether that's Ohio State, Oregon, Utah, USC potentially, whether that's Michigan, anyone, Georgia, Bama, if any of those teams have 2 losses, I still think a 1-loss Power 5 team will get in before NC State. Like, major Power 5 team. I'm not talking like if I was a 1-loss team, I don't think they make the playoffs. I don't. But if you're the bigger brands of football and you're like if Georgia walks in with 1 loss, they're getting the nod over NC State. But the moment that we have all those teams start to have 2 losses, I think NC State might get into that playoff with an undefeated season. I think they're a really good football team. I think they're going to be solid this year, and I have a lot of faith in them this year. Eastern Carolina, I think they're going to be a decent team this year. Are they going to be better than NC State on Saturday? Maybe. It's going to be a long shot because, well, Eastern Carolina, the best shot you got here is it's getting both of your guys' first game. You're getting your feet underneath you. But I'm going to have to go with NC State. I just have a lot of faith in them going into the season. We get North Carolina, the other Carolina, going up against Appalachian State. once again, I think this should be pretty one-sided. North Carolina, I would be shocked if they were to lose to Appalachian State. Next, we have Air Force going up against Northern Iowa. This is a game that I think potentially could mean a very, very little. Air Force is a team that I think could potentially scrape their way into a playoff, but Northern Iowa, I don't necessarily think the same things for them. I'm going to take Air Force, but not necessarily going to tune into that game. But I will be wanting to watch, maybe, the game of Miami going up against Bethune-Cookman. Not because Bethune-Cookman has a chance, but because that's Mario Cristobal's first game in Miami. See how they operate down there. I believe Miami wins that game, but might be a little bit of an interesting start to the season for Miami, just to see what their new situation is going down there. Next, we have Oklahoma going up against the University of Texas El Paso, UTEP. Once again, not a game I'm necessarily particularly looking forward to, but I got Oklahoma winning. And now we're at the point of a game that I will not be predicting, but you can leave your predictions down below. As you can see it, I'm repping it on the shirt, and I already told you last week I will not be predicting and or saying anything regarding Oregon football. But Georgia and Oregon play 12:30 Saturday. I will be watching the game very closely. I'm going over to a friend's house for the game, and we're going to have a fun time watching the game. I think it's going to be an exciting game, but that's all I'm willing to say at this point on that game. I'm not going to predict it, and that's all you're going to get out of me. Next, we have Arkansas going up against Cincinnati. This game is going to be fun, man. I don't think a lot of people understand that Cincinnati's still as legit as they were last year before that blowout in the playoffs. And I don't think people are giving Arkansas the same respect they should. Arkansas has a lot of guys returning, man. That team is going to be good this year. Arkansas is a team that I think could compete for a top 10 spot at some point this season. Right now, they're sitting at 19. I think they have a chance to make it in the top 10. Obviously, they're facing a hard conference. It's pretty damn hard to get even anywhere in that conference. But I think Arkansas has a chance, man. They have a lot of guys coming back. They are an older, veteran team. If Arkansas has a team that can do it, man, it's this team. I'm excited for this game. This is a game that I want to watch. I don't know if I will be watching it because the Oregon-Georgia game is going to be going on at the exact same time. But Arkansas-Cincinnati could be a pretty damn good game early on in the season. That might not mean much right now, but come later in the season, both of these teams, I think, could potentially be vying for outside shots of the playoffs. I don't think these guys are going to go necessarily be a top 4 team, but they might be sitting there around the 7th, 6th rankings, and going into the CFP rankings, they might have a little bit of a minor chance, maybe a 2%, 3% chance type of thing. But both of those teams, I think, could be very good going into the later halves of the season. And I think Arkansas is going to win this game. I just like a lot of their returning guys, quarterbacks returning, a lot of the offensive lines back. Arkansas is just ready to play football, man. Next, we have Tulsa going up against Wyoming. I've seen Wyoming get a game underneath them, and it makes me kind of want to win Wyoming. But man, that Wyoming team was not good last week against Illinois. Tulsa is not a team that I think is bad by any standpoint, so I'm going to go Tulsa. But it's a rough, if you're asking me, game for Wyoming there. I think they could make it close, but it could very well start going the opposite way very, very quickly. Next, we have Houston versus UTSA. I don't think many people will be thinking that this game could be an upset. I, on the other hand, am going to go off and probably be one of the only people to say this. I think UTSA potentially is on upset alert. I think they could do it. I think they could do it early on in the season, in-state rival. I think it's possible. I'm still taking Houston, but if somebody were to tell you that it's possible, I think it's possible. Mississippi going up against Troy. Ole Miss versus Troy. Ole Miss, they are now moving on past the Matt Corral stages of their team. who's going to be the guy who's going to step up in place of Matt Corral? I don't know, but I don't think they lose to Troy. BYU versus South Florida, I think that's going to be an entertaining game. I think BYU will get the upper hand. I think BYU is going to have a really good outlook going into week 3 when they play, once again, another top 25 team, this time in Oregon. I think they will be ready. I think they're going to get some of these easier games out the way, and they're going to be prepared come week 3. USC versus Rice. I'm not necessarily thinking this is going to be a great game, but this might be a fun game to watch, man. First game of the Lincoln Riley era in USC in Southern California. A lot of new guys out there. You got Travis Dye out there. You got Caleb Williams out there. You got Jordan Addison out there. You got a lot of guys that are interesting that came in the portal that are going to be playing for USC this year. So it could be a fun game to watch. USC, this could easily be a game where we see 50 points ratted off. I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever. But I got USC winning that one, man. Next, we got Wisconsin versus Illinois State. Wisconsin, once again, I believe they should wipe the floor with Illinois State. I don't see how they would even come close to losing. But a potential matchup that could end up being an upset alert matchup, Utah versus Florida. Now, we've seen a lot of these Pac-12 teams, and Utah included, where they lose to a team they should probably beat. Florida has the SEC. They have a big competition pool. They are ready to play tough football. Utah is the brand of tough football in the Pac-12. So Florida might be ready for this, man. They might be ready. I think this is going to be a fun game. I think you're going to need a lot of talent on the field. I think Utah's going to end up pulling it out. But I think this is going to be a game that you're looking at the end of it and you're saying maybe, just maybe, Florida is a little bit special. Next, we have Kentucky and Will Levis going up against Miami, Ohio. I think you just can't lose this game if you're Kentucky. You got a quarterback prospect on your team. You're coming off some years of where you were actually competitive in football, which really hasn't ever been the case for them. I think they easily win that game. Next, we got Baylor versus Albany. This is, once again, a very easy game to predict. Baylor's a team I think has a chance at the football playoffs. Albany, who even knew they existed? Next, we have Coastal Carolina going up against Army. Now, this is going to be a fun game, man. Coastal Carolina, very efficient last year offensively. Army, once again, one of those service schools, a team that always has a fun brand of offense to go after. Could be a very interesting watch. I'm going to go Coastal Carolina because I think they're a more well-rounded team, but it could be a very interesting watch. Ohio State, Notre Dame, 4:30, the big one. It is in Ohio State. It is in the place that you want it to be. It's in Ohio Stadium, man. It's one of the biggest games you can get to if you're Notre Dame. You're going up against somebody that last year competed, and they competed hard, and they found their way into a position for the playoffs. You found a way to didn't keep because C.J. Stroud wasn't eligible yet, but C.J. Stroud, potentially the first overall pick. Jackson Smith-Njigba, potentially the first receiver off the board. Zach Harrison on defense is back. There's guys there that still are really good that were there last year that aren't just really good. They're in the tier of potentially being a top 10 pick. They have legit guys at Ohio State, man. They have legit guys. Then you get to Notre Dame, man. New coach. Very tough matchup for a new coach to go in against Ryan Day in Ohio State, C.J. Stroud, all the guys that Ohio State can throw at you, and you're going up against a new coach week 1. At the end of the day, man, I don't know if Notre Dame can overcome the new coach week 1. Ohio State's going to be ready. They took a tough loss last year early in the season to Oregon, something that I know they went in thinking they might have had a better chance than what they expected. I don't think they make the same mistake twice. I think Ohio State goes in early in the season, handles their business. They learned from their mistake last year of taking their opponents a little bit too lightly because they didn't come from the same conference as them. They don't have necessarily the same amount of opponents and depth to their conference as the Big Ten. But I think Ohio State takes this one. I don't think that they're going to under-prepare this time. Next, we got South Carolina, the Gamecocks, going against Georgia State. Once again, a fairly easy matchup to predict. South Carolina, I believe, now has Spencer Rattler as their quarterback, so they will be going up against Georgia State, and they will probably be winning. Alabama versus Utah State, man. This is going to be a fun game. It is going to be a fun game. I don't think people are going to give Utah State the respect that they deserve. I think Utah State is a lot more of a competitive team than people want to give them credit for going into this game. I think this game could be close. I don't think that the Utah State Aggies are going to win. I don't think that at all. I think Bama wins this one, but I do think that there is a chance that this is a lot closer than what people think it's going to be. I don't think there's a chance that Utah State wins it, but I do think that there's a chance that people are a little bit shocked that it's as close as what it is. Next, we get to Mississippi State going up against Memphis. Two teams that are kind of in the same area. They're not necessarily great. They're not necessarily horrible. I'm going to go Mississippi State. They just strike me as the team that's better. No rhyme or reason. Louisville versus Syracuse. I got to go with Louisville here. Syracuse lost Tommy D. Tommy D is at Illinois, and he had a great week last week, but they lost Tommy D. That means Louisville's winning. Oregon State versus Boise State. Yet another matchup I think could be very interesting this season. I think Oregon State's going to prove a lot of guys wrong this year. I think Oregon State's a very competitive team this year. I think Oregon State is going to get a competitive season out of it, an 7-8 win season. I think they're going to be a solid team this season. But is it against Boise State? I don't know. I'm going to take Oregon State. I think they're going to be a little bit more ready than Boise State, but we'll see. Florida State, shout out to my boy Steven, going up in LSU. They're going to Louisiana to face LSU. That's a big one, man. It's a big, big one. Sunday afternoon. But I'm going to go Florida State. I think they already have a game under them. They're going to be a little bit more ready to go. Then we get Clemson versus Georgia Tech. Clemson, they have all the aspirations in the world to become, once again, a playoff team. I'm going to go with Clemson to win in Week 1. And that's all we got for the important games of Week 1. Like I said, we won't be predicting some of the other stuff. Like, we're not going to be predicting St. Francis versus Akron. We're just not. Nobody wants to hear about it. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I will talk to you guys next time. And this video will be posted Friday morning, as for the first game we predicted was on Friday. But thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you next time. Make sure you like, comment, do that all fun stuff. Let me know down below who you think is going to win in Week 1 and who you think is going to be potentially a college football playoff team going into this season. Thank you guys.